Imagine living in a town where the air you breathe could be harming you and your family. That's the reality for people living in Verona, Missouri. That's where BCP Ingredients is. They make additives for animal feed. And the EPA found them violating the Clean Air Act because they released ethylene oxide. This case is really concerning, not just because of what the company did, but because of where they did it.
This facility is in a community that already has a lot of environmental problems, so this really brings those problems to light.
Let's talk about ethylene oxide. Most people haven't heard of it, but it's something we all should know about.
Ethylene oxide is a gas. It's colorless, and it's used a lot in industry, like for sterilizing medical equipment and for making certain chemicals. In this case, BCP Ingredients uses it to make choline chloride. That's an additive they put in animal feed.
What did the EPA find when they inspected the facility?
They found a lot of serious violations. BCP Ingredients didn't have the right procedures in place for preventing accidental releases of ethylene oxide or for responding to them. Their alarms weren't working right either. So back in April of 2022, they had a release. And it went on for over 7 hours because nobody knew it was happening. They also had problems with their compliance audits, and they were missing important safety information. Plus, their risk management plan was outdated.
Outdated? How so?
A risk management plan is a document. It outlines all the potential hazards a facility might have and the steps they'll take to prevent accidents and to reduce the impact if something does happen. So an outdated plan means they weren't prepared to deal with the risks of ethylene oxide.
It's scary to think about an ethylene oxide leak going on for 7 hours. It's classified as a hazardous air pollutant.
Yeah.
And we know exposure can cause serious health problems.
Absolutely. Even short-term exposure can be bad. It can cause breathing problems, headaches, dizziness, and nausea. And long-term exposure has been linked to certain cancers, like lymphoma and leukemia.
With such serious violations and health risks, what happened to BCP Ingredients? Did they face any consequences?
They reached a settlement with the EPA and the Department of Justice for violating the Clean Air Act.
What did that settlement involve?
First, they have to pay a $300,000 civil penalty. That's to discourage them from doing this again.
Is that a typical amount?
It depends on how bad the violation was, the company's history, and things like that. $300,000 is a lot of money. But some people think it's not enough to really stop big companies from cutting corners on safety.
So they have to pay a fine. What else is part of the settlement?
They're required to install a new scrubber system at their facility.
What does a scrubber system do?
It controls air pollution. It removes harmful pollutants from the air coming out of the factory, in this case. It's designed to trap and neutralize the ethylene oxide before it can get into the air, which should really reduce the risk to the surrounding community.
That's good, but technology can only do so much. What about the people who live and work near the facility? How does the settlement address the impact on them?
The settlement includes $350,000 for community benefit projects.
That sounds promising. What kind of projects?
A few things. The Verona Fire Department is getting new emergency equipment. They're also funding 2 mobile health clinics. That will bring healthcare to people in the area. And BCP Ingredients will be supporting local medical services through the Cox Health Foundation.
That's good to hear. But it makes you think about the bigger picture. How do we balance industry and the environment? How do we make sure companies put people's health first, especially in communities that are already dealing with environmental problems?
It's a difficult question with no easy answers. It's going to take a lot of work from the government, from businesses, and from communities themselves. We need to make sure companies are being responsible, not just reacting to problems after they happen, but preventing them in the first place.
We've just scratched the surface here. There's a lot more to discuss in the next part. We're going to look closer at how ethylene oxide is regulated and how those regulations are enforced.
We'll talk about some of the challenges and look at new technologies that could help reduce the risks of using this chemical. It's great they're doing these projects, but it also makes you wonder about corporate responsibility.
How so?
How responsible are companies for the safety and well-being of the people around them, especially if they're already in a community with environmental problems?
There's a lot to think about there.
There is. We need to consider the economy, the regulations, and the ethics of it all.
Let's break it down, starting with the economic side.
Companies are in business to make money, and they're always trying to cut costs. But that can't come at the expense of people's health or the environment.
It's a tough balance.
It is. But more and more companies are looking at sustainability. They're realizing it's good for business to be good citizens. When they invest in the environment and the community, it can actually help their bottom line.
What about regulations?
Regulations are important. They set standards for emissions and waste disposal and other things that could be harmful. They make sure everyone's playing by the same rules and that companies are operating safely.
But rules are only good if people follow them.
Right. That's where the EPA comes in. They monitor companies, investigate violations, and they can punish companies that break the rules.
You mentioned ethical implications earlier.
It's about doing the right thing, not just the legal thing. Companies have a moral obligation to protect the community.
To be good neighbors.
Exactly. It means taking steps to minimize their environmental impact, being open with the community, and addressing concerns. It's about building trust and working together.
This BCP ingredients case shows how important community engagement is.
I agree. The community benefit projects are a step in the right direction. It shows they're willing to address the community's needs.
But how are those projects chosen?
The community needs to have a say in that. They should be involved in deciding how the money is spent and what projects get done.
And everything needs to be transparent.
Absolutely. Companies need to be open about what they're doing and the risks involved. They're accountable to the community.
That kind of openness builds trust.
It does. And it helps create a real dialogue about how to balance business interests with the environment and with the well-being of the community.
There are lessons to be learned from the BCP ingredients case.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It shows us that we have to think about the environment and public health.
Right.
And community engagement. They're all connected.
We can't address one without the others.
Right.
And we need to keep improving how we manage industrial activities.
We need to keep looking at what we're doing and finding ways to reduce our impact and protect people's health.
And we have to be proactive about environmental justice.
We can't wait for problems to happen. We need to prevent them.
This case raises questions about economic growth and the environment.
How can we make sure industry doesn't hurt public health or damage the environment?
How can we encourage companies to focus on sustainability?
And how can we give communities a voice in decisions that affect them?
These are big questions.
They are. And there's no easy answer. We need to hear from everyone and work together to find solutions.
This conversation needs to keep going.
It does. We need to keep talking, keep asking questions, and keep working towards a future where industry and the environment can coexist.
We've talked about the risks of ethylene oxide and the rules and regulations and the importance of working with communities. Now let's look closer at the specific regulations for this chemical.
We'll talk about how they're enforced, the challenges involved, and new technologies that could help reduce the risks.
But how is ethylene oxide actually regulated?
It's covered by a few major laws, like the Clean Air Act. That law sets standards for air quality, including limits on how much ethylene oxide can be in the air.
So there are limits on how much can be released.
Yes. The EPA also has rules for facilities that use ethylene oxide, like the BCP ingredients plant.
What do those regulations cover?
A lot of things. They cover things like emission controls, leak detection and repair, and what to do in an emergency. It's a whole system designed to minimize risks and protect workers and the community.
It sounds thorough, but are there challenges in enforcing those regulations?
There are always challenges. One is keeping up with technology. Technology changes fast, and so do industrial processes, so regulations have to be updated all the time.
What other challenges are there?
Resources are a big one. The EPA has a lot to do, but they don't have unlimited money, so they have to prioritize. They can't inspect every facility all the time.
So it can be hard to keep an eye on everything.
It can. And community involvement is really important, too. Regulations work best when people understand the risks and have a say in what happens.
Can technology help reduce the risks of using ethylene oxide?
Absolutely. There's a lot of research happening on emission control technology. Scientists and engineers are always looking for better ways to capture and neutralize pollutants before they get into the environment.
Are there any promising technologies in development?
There are. Things like advanced oxidation processes. They use chemical reactions to break down pollutants, and biofiltration systems. They use microorganisms to clean the air.
That's good to hear. So to wrap up, what are the key takeaways from all of this?
The BCP ingredients case is just one example, but it shows us some important things. We need to balance economic growth with protecting the environment. We need strong regulations, and we need to enforce them. And we need communities to be involved. It's a shared responsibility.
It sounds like we all have a role to play.
We do. We need to stay informed, support good policies, and choose companies that care about sustainability. Even small actions can make a difference.
Thank you for sharing your expertise. This has been a really informative conversation. It's given us a lot to think about, and hopefully it will encourage our listeners to get involved.